This is the episode about fat shaming and body shaming. Yes, we're gonna go there. Finally, get back to a life with exercise, and this is your first step. We're gonna start getting you moving. I'm Lynn Lindberg, your bad couch guru. Welcome to the Couch to Active podcast, where I believe that exercise should not be dreadful, but getting off the couch is the hardest exercise we do. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about a topic that makes a lot of us squeamish, but it's something that we think about a lot, but we don't like to talk about. However, we see it on social media. We see it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the news, the media, everywhere, and that is fat shaming and body shaming. Today, I'm bringing to you a unique and interesting compilation of interviews of folks from literally all over the globe talking about their personal experiences of fat shaming and their views of it, and some tips about what we can do about it. Now, I've got to tell you, as I edited this episode, holy moly, I had a roller coaster of emotions all over the place, from starting out really excited about, I'm going to build this episode about fat shaming and we're going to help people be more body positive and body accepting and we're going to help people realize how hurtful and wrong it really is. Realizing, holy crap, this is complex. This is nuanced. This is way more than your, top 7 tips to help you quit body shaming people. Ultimately, my goal was really kind of crass. It was to help people flat out quit body shaming each other and themselves. I'll say that was a noble goal, and it's still good. And it really is my goal to help us be more compassionate to each other around this topic. But wow, there's a lot more to it. And it's an incredibly emotional and twitchy topic for people. So please, this is my listeners' advisory. So listeners' advisory, some of the content in this episode can trigger fairly strong emotions for folks who are working through eating disorders, massive body image issues, or folks who have experienced any kind of discrimination based on what they look like. So if that is a really sensitive, hard topic for you, please feel free to skip this episode. When I first thought about how to do a podcast around body shaming and fat shaming, I knew that it had to be more than just my voice. We needed to hear from more people than just me. So today we brought with you a compilation of very interesting people.
This is Jennifer Nelson, and I've lived in Seattle for 23 years and own a real estate company, and I'm a mom and a wife.
Jessica Schiller-Silverman.
I am Esther McNary, and I am a joyful wellness girl in the Houston area.
My name is Nandita, and I am originally from India, and my husband and I, we moved to the United States in 2006, and we've been here for about 13 years now.
I am a certified exercise physiologist and a registered dietitian and nutritionist.
I created Fat Kid Dance Party Aerobics. I really care a lot about making people feel good and whole in the bodies they have today.
Personal trainer to fitness coach, and I love Yanks and particularly Seattle. I used to live in Vancouver, so I called Seattle and Vancouver nearly pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. To us, we're very different, but we love Vancouver. As you listen to their stories, I want you to realize these are real humans living their real lives in the one body that they have today. And I have so much respect, and I feel so honored that they were willing to share their stories and share their heart and share who they are. But it doesn't necessarily come easy. In fact, it can be really, really hard to put your heart out on a table and hope that you're met with compassion.
It's, being vulnerable about these issues. It's like you're opening a wound because you've been hurt in a way. And it's like, it's going to kind of ooze out. But that's how we find healing too.
last week I just moved back to South Florida and it was really hot. I felt like gelato. And guess what? I ate the whole thing. Maybe in the past I would have eaten half, because again, that shaming of like, who am I? Or if I'm not at that weight, I shouldn't have that. And that's what society also projects on us. People look and they see somebody eating that in public, you know, gelato. Oh, she shouldn't be eating that gelato. Look at her. She should be on a diet, say a lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. But I think that's a lot of, right, what's still present, you know, in society today. But of course, I think even the last 5-10 years, society has evolved even beyond that. Just shaming in general for anything that's not like yourself.
The pain is real. The hurt is hidden, because we just want to go on and live our lives. We want to be seen for the spirit that's inside of us and the awesome people that we are. But our culture is so messed up and so trapped by marketing messages after marketing messages, and it hasn't always been this way. Did you know that the bathroom scale wasn't even a thing until this century, and that it was marketed to us, marketed to women? Did you know that pretty much everything we think about, our outside images and what we look like, is a direct result of the marketing? And we as a culture now are attributing a tremendous amount of value of a human being simply by our exterior. And we know deep down that's not what matters.
So shame is an ineffective tool, and it's a tool that's taught to us by bullies. So the bullies in our lives, who traumatized you? Who shamed you? Take that, and if you're trying to apply shame to get people to change behavior, it doesn't work. Shame makes people gain weight, not lose weight. Since we live in a fat-phobic culture that tells us that fat is bad or wrong, literally no one would be fat if shame worked to get us to lose weight. Fat shame affects everyone, because thin people are constantly affected by the fear of getting fat. Our bodies are literally always changing. Like, you are aging right now. You are only temporarily able-bodied. And there are so many things that cause fat that aren't related to lifestyle. Like, this is why I think like fat shame, ultimately, they want to blame it on lifestyle. Like, oh, it's your fault that you're fat, and it's perceived as a mutable identity, which means it's changeable. And in fact, it is not for most people. People can be fat because of genetics. People can be fat because of a side effect of a disease. And often fat people are treated for fat and not for their actual symptoms. There's medical fat phobia is a huge problem. People can be fat because of hormone changes. People can be fat because of grief or other diseases. And people can be fat because of lifestyle. And people can also be fat because of the effects of trauma. People cope with food just the way people cope with work and cope with shopping and cope with drugs and cope with alcohol. And like, I've seen people get that stomach amputation surgery and turn to a heroin addiction because they couldn't use food anymore.
I grew up in Dublin. At the moment, I'm living in London, and I think there was a billboard last year, and the billboard had something like "Get your beach body." It went global. There was a protein supplement company, and there was a girl in her bikini, and they were like, "To who is to say this is a beach body?"
You know, a part of it is also cultural, in the sense that we've been conditioned for years to kind of look at ourselves critically.
Mm-hmm.
Conditioned for years to kind of fat shame ourselves, because for me, I've heard it all my life. You know, some distant aunt, twice removed, whoever comes in and says, "Oh my God, look at you. You look so healthy."
Right? Yeah. I've had $1 for every time I felt shame. I'd be on an island somewhere. I'd be like, "Welcome to my island, everybody." You know?
The island of shame.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface of this topic, and it's because it's become more like, people are more open about it now. It's like, like not talked about. It was like a taboo subject. Don't talk about it, or don't talk about it. We don't want to hear about it. But now people are, which is thanks to social media, I think, in a big part, are more open to just blare their story, because they're like, no one's going to really see me, but I can just share my story. And
culture. Banting was like the first diet book in the late 1800s. And when you actually read the text, I actually talked with a researcher, Adrienne Batar, who for her project read text as like try to learn about human history through diet books. It was
Wow.
fascinating.
Wow.
But when you look at the text, he had weight stigma. Like he drank beer at lunch and dinner on his weight loss diet plan. It was basically like almost paleo, but with beer, and said he lost some weight. Tons of people bought the book. But what he talked about is people treated him better. So the reality of it is that we had that all the way back then. Then the bathroom scale was invented, and they put a woman in her coffee cup with her curlers standing on there and literally said, weigh yourself every day for health and wellness and success in life. And then they put in the corner, like, the Academy of Medicine says to do this. It was all BS. It's like, it was given to us by culture.
Yeah.
And for years we have accepted, and the way we value women is based on our thinness and our ability to be polite and kind. And so I think it just helps. Like, you don't have to become a sociologist, but even just stopping to think of the question, like, who taught you what to think about your body? Right.
Yeah.
And just journal on that, or think about, like, what was happening when you were 9 or 10? Because most people start their first diet by 9 or 10. You can Wikipedia that, right? And see what you find out. Like, I think when I was 16, like, Jenny Craig came and, Slim Fast was out. So, but you think about your experience and how culture created who you are and how you think. You were not born with the t-shirt, does my diaper make my butt look big or whatever, but yet they sold those onesies.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you saw the girls, it went viral. It was a girl's lunchbox in glitter, and it said cheat day meal, cheat day lunch or something.
No.
Like for little girls. Yeah. So it's just, it's a cultural conditioning. Thin is good. It's social power. It's valuable. You must be healthy. And here, thin people are like, oh, I'm too busy to go to the doctor, and boom, they end up getting high cholesterol or diabetes. Even we talk about Biggest Loser, but Bob Harper was the one who had the heart attack, and he made millions telling everybody you're going to die any day now. And he's the one who had the heart attack, and he got away with it. Oh, it's genetic, right? But anyone else on the show who said, oh, it's genetic, they would still get blamed. And that's the example of weight stigma. Yeah. That is what is cultural, and you aren't the problem. It just sucks because the higher weight you are, the more work you have to do to deal with the BS.
We can all remember the fat kid who was bullied in grade school. We could probably name him today.
So I was bullied both at school and also at home by people who both just didn't have, like, at home, it was from people who believed that they were helping me by pathologizing my body and telling me my body was wrong. I was put on Weight Watchers at age 8, which I think forcing kids to diet is a form of child abuse.
Why is that? Why is that a normal piece of our culture? The shame and pressure that we put on people to fit into a certain size and look a certain way lands so many of us with eating disorders, mental health issues, self-esteem issues. And again, they're all hidden. These aren't things that we casually mention. These are things we hide unless we feel very, very safe to share. Yeah, I'd love to give you the mic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been in a larger body for most of my life, and learned through a lot of therapy and counseling that, from abuse as a young age, I would try to hide myself in my body. It's like, well, if I don't look attractive, then no one will, try to abuse me again. And, worked through that, dealt with that, figuring people in my past, but I didn't take care of myself for a long time in the proper way. And I kind of, my body is got a little messed up with that, my metabolism, my thyroid, my hormones. And so then I developed an eating disorder, trying to get healthy. And well, that wasn't a very good situation. That almost took me out of this world. And thankfully I was able to get the help that I needed through a very intense counseling program. I actually went away for 6 months and did a very intense therapy, and really came back to life and was like, all right, how can we do this? How can I live life and not my goal just be to look a certain way? And, the past 10 years, it's, grown and shifted. But I've been rejected for insurance because of a number on the scale. I've had doctors tell me, oh, you just need weight loss surgery. Without even seeing numbers, labs. They just take a look or see, and the scale number and say automatically know what I could need. I was like, well, I'm actually here because I think I might have broken something.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I had an ER doctor tell me that my broken foot wasn't broken. It was just in pain because I was, needed to lose weight.
Oh, wow.
So I had a broken foot.
Wow.
I was a runner. I was overtraining.
Yeah.
And I broke my foot.
Oh my gosh.
It just all these, over and over again. And even last week at the gym, I was checking out of my classes that I was teaching, and a trainer approached me and he was just like, can I help you? And I said, well, I'm just checking out of my classes. I'm good on the computer, because some people try to go on there and they don't know what they're doing.
Oh, sure.
So
sure.
They need some help.
And
he's like, oh, yeah, I recognize you. You're, one of the cycle instructors. And I was like, yeah, I teach a cycle class and I teach body pump. He's like, yeah, I saw you with the guy who lost 100 pounds. And I was like, yeah, well, his name. And I said his name, and I'm like, that's his name. I don't really talk about him. That's not his, I don't care about that's not who he is to me. He's my friend and a fellow instructor.
Yeah. And
then he looked at me and he goes, well, how much are you looking to lose? And I turned and looked at him and I said, actually, that's not my goal. He just was so shocked that could, my goal could be something different than just weight loss. He's like, oh, well, what is your goal? And I said, my goal is to be as healthy as possible and take care of myself and teach my classes and just enjoy life. And he was dropping the F-bomb every other word as well. He was like, well, that's a much better mindset. You are so right. And that's exactly why that's my mindset.
Yay.
It was just like, and in the fitness industry, I think there is a huge, challenge for people, because it's like, oh, you must look a certain way, or you have to, be a certain weight or whatever to be an instructor. And it's like, nope, that's not true. I actually won the instructor of the month last week. Didn't even know that was, it doesn't matter. I'm thankful I'm in my classes, like, they don't care. They want to know how to do the workout, and they want to be encouraged and coached through. You don't have to look a certain way to do that. There are definitely days where I'm like, can be hard on myself, or I'm like, why won't this change? What am I doing wrong? I've been doing really hard work to repair the damage that's been done, but I still am like, might not look like I've done the work, so it's like, I've had to really come to, I'm not always going to love everything about my body, and that's okay. I might not like that I have some gray hairs, or that my nose is a certain way, or that I have my dad's chin, but that's okay. I can still love who I am.
Yeah.
And more about loving who I am on the inside. And I think about, when I leave this earth, do I want to be remembered for a 6-pack or for my kindness? Because, what are we going to write in our gravestones? Esther had a great chuffed body. Can't take it with me. And I'm doing everything I can to take care of myself, getting proper sleep and rest and nutrition, and doing everything I can so that I can be around to share the message of loving who I am for who I am.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because of what I look like. It's taken years to shift the mindset, and it still can come back in times, and it crops up, and it's like, you're not good enough today, you didn't, do well enough in that class or whatever. And I'm like, no, I did. And I am good enough. Yeah. I actually have a alarm on my phone every morning that says, you are enough. Just to remind me. Some days I don't need it. Some days I do.
You are enough. You are enough. You are enough. That was Esther. She's a fitness influencer, group fitness instructor, cycle instructor. Every time she goes into a gym, some people forget to see her for who she is, an amazing, awesome human being that loves people's souls and loves people's hearts. Nobody needs to tell Esther how to live her life. Nobody needs to encourage her to exercise, eat healthy, live well. She's doing it already, and she has worked harder than most of us. Yet our culture still leans towards making snap judgments that do nothing but hurt. I'd like you to now meet Jennifer. She lives in Seattle, and she's the owner of a real estate company in the SoDo district. Jennifer and her wife are raising a beautiful 3-year-old daughter. And Jennifer, when she was young, was one of the skinny girls.
I grew up as an athlete and went to college on a basketball scholarship. And I was just a stick of a girl in high school and didn't know otherwise. Ate what I wanted, but not overeating, and just did my thing, right? Sports were my deal. And then went through college, same thing, really sort of active and playing all the things. And then kind of got into I would say my early 30s. And all of a sudden, I wasn't in the same shape. I mean, I felt like I was active still, but I couldn't eat the same things and not think about it. I appeared to be almost 30 or averaging 30. And for the first time in my life, all of a sudden grasping people's concern about weight. I didn't spend the first part of my life ever thinking about weight. It never crossed my mind until I got into my 30s. And then I was like, this is what these girls are talking about. This is what these women struggle with, because now it's my struggle. And then as the years kept going, as we know, it gets harder and harder. No matter the amount of activity you do, like you can't, I think one of my trainers said to me one time, you can't outrun, outbike, out yoga, out whatever, a bad diet. And so if you're not paying attention to what you're eating, you can exercise for 3 hours a day and it's not going to help you get, the results that you want. And so it's just been this journey, honestly. I'm 47 now. I was 30 sort of when I had to start thinking about it. And I feel a little still disillusioned by the whole thing. And then you add a kid, we got a 1 hour notice to adopt our daughter. She was in foster care. And so we just all of a sudden like this, I was Instamom. There was no 9-month, period where she's in my belly. So you add that to the mix and start a business and all that. And it's funny because, where does your time go to get all the things done you're supposed to get done and be skinny and be energetic and be all these things we're supposed to be? I think women in particular have to be more things all the time. And so, when do we find the time to go to the grocery store to buy the good food and make the good meals? And I like to cook, but I like to cook when I have no time constraints. Well,
yes.
When's that?
Yeah.
I don't know when that is. Every other month on a Saturday, I guess. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
So that's kind of funny that you so you have to sort of figure out how to have this balance between sometimes I'm going to order pizza because that's all that's my bandwidth for today. I know that doesn't make me feel that great, but I don't know the alternative. And so there's this balance, this batting around in my head of trying to not feel guilty. And then I think also just being a mom and knowing that I have a daughter who, as she gets older, is going to be looking at me and what are your habits? And, I have a mom that's overweight and that there's a shaming piece, I think, from kids that come to women too.
Oh, wow.
To say, well, so-and-so's mom is skinny and she does yoga all the time and blah, blah, blah.
Fat shaming doesn't begin and end with only those that are technically listed as quote unquote obese, according to a U.S. index. It reaches all of us, even folks who are considered a normal weight or underweight. Meet Jessica, who even as a child was acutely aware of her body image and her weight.
So for me, fat shaming, the first thing I thought of was shaming myself, because myself being on so many rodeos, as I call this, my entire life, being maybe 10, 15 pounds overweight as a child because my mother used to help me. So I just thought to myself, I shame myself probably more than others, right? A lot of times we think others are shaming us, when in reality, either number one, they're just trying to help us, right? To kind of, it's an awareness thing, right? This addiction, any addiction really, the first step is always awareness. And so for me, yes, I'm aware, but that doesn't stop me from at certain points shaming myself, right? So if I did happen to buy that box of Yodels and have one in the evening, then feeling guilt, shame, and resentment after the fact, and then maybe walking into the mirror and looking at myself saying, what did you do to yourself? You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. That's the first thing that came to mind is I've evolved tenfold on this journey. I've evolved significantly.
Yay.
I still am human, and I still have those moments where I continue to shame myself. You know, just like when I go on vacation, I notice that, you know, and I still do track everything I eat just for an awareness piece, just to kind of help myself stay within boundaries. Because that's something that I was always challenged with when it came to food, because I love to eat is portion control. So this kind of helps keep me grounded, helps keep me aware. And it's something I enjoy doing. A lot of people don't necessarily like to track. They think it's another thing on their to-do list. But to me, it's empowering, because it's like, yes, this is the choice that I made. And I document that. And it's like, it's just a constant reminder of how far I've evolved on this path, what I've learned, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And continue to do that, right? It's an ever evolving, as I always say, it's a big giant experiment of, you know, every week kind of rewinding and saying, okay, what went well this week? What didn't maybe work so well? What would I do a little bit differently? And instead of shaming myself, right, as much as I did in the past, right, there's still a little bit there, right? As I always say, we're never 100% healed, because then we wouldn't, right, have a purpose in life, right? Our purpose is always for us to work through and to heal through our issues. It's just that constant reminder of, like I said, how far I've come, and not to feel guilt, to just say, if I have that, you know, yodel, or even maybe two, just say, hey, did you enjoy it?
Sometimes life throws us a curveball, like a very, very demanding job. We blink and boom, next thing we know, we've put on some weight and we're not sure what to do. And our culture demands us only one response, that we should be ashamed and we should freak out and take radical action to lose those 5 or 10 pounds.
I used to work in corporate finance. We had that conversation. Yeah. My weight was like a stock chart. Boom, boom, boom. You know, I had a board to draw, you know, these highs and lows, right? Extreme highs or extreme lows, right? I had no problem learning how to eat healthy. It was how to eat healthy and live my life and enjoy my life, right? So maybe 5-6 days a week, I eat to fuel my body, right? And then maybe 1 to 2 days a week, I just let go.
And then we conform and we force ourselves to live very restricted, very rigid, very controlled lives in the kitchen. And if we ever eat anything that's not a piece of celery or a carrot stick, we feel guilty pleasure, like it's such a huge indulgence, and we find ourselves obsessing.
I, along this whole path, have always been my own worst enemy, right? As we always are. Just sometimes we're not even aware of that subconscious conversation that goes on, right? It's always running in the background, whether we're aware of it or not. And eventually, right, I think that's when the shift really happens, that you can take control, like I said, and live your life while still, you know, being on this healthy journey of life, is when you just have that constant awareness.
And there's a fine line. And then the complication of that fine line between obsessing over food and eating healthy starts to get confused and muddled.
No matter how much weight you've lost, and this is something that I go through every day, no matter how much weight you've lost, and even when I was at my lowest, like right now, I'm at a happy medium. I'm at a weight that I can live my life, enjoy myself. It's 20 pounds more than my lowest. Yep. I'm not proud of that moment either, because I starved myself. So like you said, the phobia of gaining weight, right? Fat phobia, that was me for many, many years, right? And I remember, and this was sort of the defining moment, I was in Disney World with a guy I was dating, and I was actively trying to lose weight. And Disney World then, didn't have very good options. Maybe they do now. It was apple slices and Diet Coke. That's all I ate, you know, and maybe a salad, a garden salad. That's all I ate all day. And by 10 o'clock at night, because I was like, there's nothing healthy. And by the end of the day, we finally sat down to dinner. I said, oh, there's a sushi place. And I said, oh, sushi's healthy. And my face just turned ghostly white. And the guy I was with said, are you okay? And I literally felt like I was going to pass out. And I remember that moment to this day, because that also reminded me, I don't want to be that person either. You know, yes, I looked great on the outside, but on the inside, I was broken. You know, I was broken. I was always in this inner turmoil of food is evil when food isn't evil. You know what I mean? Even if I wanted the Mickey Mouse ear ice cream, there's nothing evil about it in moderation. And that's why I'm also not an advocate of a lot of those extreme, diets. Yes, they may work for some people, keto, paleo, etc. Anything in extreme or to me, any diet, I'm a rebel that you say you can't have this, I want it that much more. And is it sustainable, right? Is it sustainable to say, I'm never going to have a piece of birthday cake on my birthday or somebody else's birthday?
Those of us who are fortunate can find ourselves in a healthy place where we allow ourselves to love our lives and live our lives and be happy. When we begin to heal from body image issues, when we begin to realize we can love, we can live, we can have a bright, wonderful, amazing life without conforming into everybody else's box, that's when freedom begins, and that's when our hearts begin to soar. Jessica shares more of her story about how vastly different the food availability can be between 3 cities she lived in, South Florida, Chicago, and San Francisco.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. So 3 completely different dynamics. And it's funny you mentioned that because I'm born and raised in South Florida, Chicago, about 10 years ago, 6 years there, couldn't tolerate the brutal winters. So wasn't ready to kind of go back to South Florida. So I moved to the Bay Area, and all 3 are very different in terms of lifestyles, interpretations, right, of body image, body shaming. South Florida has changed significantly, though. I must say, I just moved back a month ago. They're a lot more along the lines, I think, now of California in terms of options for healthy eating, more embracement of kombucha and all like the holistic style of living. Chicago, not so much at all. And that is kind of one of the reasons it drew me away, is because I moved there at my lowest weight and slowly, not to blame, right, the culture or the weather, but environment is very much a factor, right? And when you have 9 months out of the year where it's miserable cold, you want to eat. The body just, right, naturally wants to stay warm, which drives you to that comfort food, which typically isn't, right, grown in the garden, so to speak. And not as much access, right, to fresh produce, farmers markets. Out of all 3, if I had to rate them, number 1, obviously California, number 2, probably Florida, and then number 3, Chicago. But also the culture in Chicago is still very, funny enough, meat and potatoes, steakhouses, Chicago hot dogs, Chicago pizza. Right? A lot of us think that it's just something that we see on TV, but no, I live there, and I live right by Wrigley Field, and even at Wrigley Field, let's say, versus Giant Stadium, right, in San Francisco, the options at a ball game are significantly different. In San Francisco, you have options to have, Korean pho, and you have all different healthy options, veggie burgers and vegan and Impossible burger, corn on a stick without slabbed in butter. There's just a lot more options to live a healthy lifestyle living in the Bay Area. I just think there's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more, health conscious individuals. The weather obviously has a significant factor too. It's beautiful weather year round. And Florida is definitely catching on. Like I said, I've been here a month, and I've seen a lot of the trends from California filtering out this way.
I'd like you to now meet Nandita, originally from India, moved to the United States about 13 years ago. Nandita's heritage has influenced her body image in a surprisingly similar way, but it definitely has some unique differences.
In India, growing up in that culture, the concept of personal space is something that is very alien to a number of people there. Whether you're waiting in a queue to get into some place or at airport security, or if it's making comments like this, for example, oh my goodness, your mom is so pretty, but you're so dark. Who's going to marry you? It all comes down to who is going to marry you. I'm like, not everybody wants to get married. It's not a goal for people. That it all comes down to that. So there are 2 aspects to shaming in Indian culture. One is that everybody thinks there is like this prevalent popular opinion that being lighter skinned means that you're more beautiful, or you're perceived as more beautiful than being darker skinned. And I'm like, how much lighter can we get? We're all brown people. Seriously, varying degrees of brown, but we're all brown. Accept it and move on.
Now, is it lighter skinned and skinny?
I think so. Lighter skin is definitely where you're considered more beautiful. I think it's got a couple of unfortunate connotations to it. One, we were ruled by the lighter skinned people for so many years. And two, aristocrats typically seem to be of lighter skin. Now, I don't know if it's because they didn't go work out in the sunlight or if it's just selective breeding. I don't know. I have opinions, but one, it is lighter skinned. And then as time went along, I think the Western ideals of beauty got hold, because if you look at how Indian women are built and how Western women are built, or how other Asian women are built, there are certain trends that seem to emerge, and mostly Indian women tend to be very curvy. Yeah, I have issues with my curves, of course, but I'd like a shirt that buttons without gaping.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
It would be nice, but then it is what it is, right? I'm not going to do it. I can't do anything about it, so I try to find shirts that don't have that issue.
God, that's actually fascinating to think about, because if the trends started in India and moved the other way, that wouldn't be a problem in fashion. There's no way they would have made button shirts. All the women would have been like, "This is stupid."
Exactly. They tend to be very curvy. So, for example, when you look at some of the actresses and the models from, let's say, the 70s to now, there was a variety in terms of women's size and appearance in the 70s. Mm-hmm. But now, when you look at the actresses and the models, I swear, either I'm getting old, or they're all starting to look like each other. They all look alike. They're all a size 0, and they all have the same hair, they all have the same color, and they all have the same body type. It's getting impossible to kind of distinguish one from the other. Plus, I'm getting old, so.
Well,
older.
Older.
Older. Some members of the family that I would still like to acknowledge as part of my family, they live back in India. Then I'm shocked by how little things have changed back home. My cousin was getting married, so I wanted to obviously wear a sari, which is our ethnic dress, and it has a top, which is called a blouse, which is essentially like a crop top. It is very form-fitting, so as you grow, what fit you 20 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't fit you anymore. Or even if you are the same size, it fits you a little differently because time has marched on and gravity leaves its mark on you.
Yes, it does.
I go back and I was telling my aunt, hey, I need a tailor because I need this done. And then she's like, well, if you just eat less, maybe you'll fit into your old ones.
Ooh. Oh, wow. And what do you think is going through your aunt's mind when those words come out of her mouth?
Well, since it's my aunt, I don't think anything much is going on inside her head. But
okay.
Oh boy, meow. Okay, that was.
Let's take a look at another angle here. Does body shaming impact men? Absolutely. What if you're a man who won a bodybuilding competition? You actually placed on the podium. You would think at that level, when you have the external validation that says, hey, not only do you have the best body by outside standards, you now have a medal and a podium finish to prove it. Would that make someone happy? I'd like you to meet Owen from Ireland and listen to his story of what happened to him when he was at the podium finish.
People are more inclined to change because of pain rather than pleasure. I've always had this kind of background to push and to do stuff even when I don't feel like it, to build the mentality of discipline. But that said, also, I don't think it just encompasses full being in shape. At one point, when I was in the best shape of my life, I was competed in a men's swimwear contest, getting really kind of in shape and all that kind of stuff, which you think like vain and all. And it was just a challenge to push myself, to be honest with it. But I was actually at the worst point in my life at that point, where I felt depressed and suicidal. And so being in shape is not everything. Being in shape is not the be all and end all, but working towards a goal, taking action to improve yourself. And the initial thing to improve yourself with is your body composition. And that then drives transformation. That can drive the change in your mindset to what you believe you can do, whether that's professionally, in your relationships, with your children and everything. But as soon as you start taking that action to turn around your life, and the only thing you can really control in some situations is your body, is your mind. And when you take back that control of your body, then you can turn your mind. So even though I was in the best shape of my life, I was in the worst mental shape of my life. And then that also then started to conform, and using exercise to start to manage my mental health also. You know, but before this transformation, I hit a really bad low of feeling suicidal, and I sat there and I couldn't get out of bed. And when I moved from bed, I went down and I lay on the couch. And then when I eventually sick of the couch, I went back to bed. And I remember one night just sitting there unable to sleep, and it was about 2 or 3 a.m. And I sit up out of bed and I just burst into tears crying, because that was the moment that I just realized, I was like, what's the point in going on and living? But I just hadn't been active. I hadn't used the body. I hadn't done anything. As you say, I just went from lying on the couch, lying in bed, just being there, not using your body, not releasing that energy out of you. You just start to implode nearly, where you should be getting out and exploding that energy outward through getting active and getting fit. I think most people at that kind of level, there is a sense of body shame. Now, this was quite a while ago, and I don't know, I reckon I was probably doing it now, just even thinking about this now, I was probably doing it out of a bit of a shame. I think I was doing it for external purposes of, after being through a breakup, I was like, I'm going to get in shape. I was depressed, found a relationship, and my relationship, or my emotions hung on that relationship, which was keeping me afloat. When that was over, I needed something else to attach to. So I was doing it out of anger and frustration to prove this go wrong. I'm going to show her, I'm going to get in shape. And I just felt empty at the end of it. But with the community of people standing on stage and some of the guys next, you could see I came second. The guy that was next, that came first, me and him next, we kind of owned it. We stepped out and we're like, you know what, I'm just going to give it my best. But some guys, as soon as they step there, they'd look and go, well, he's bigger than me, and he's this. And they start judging themselves next to the other guy. And I didn't really notice at the time, so it's so laser focused. But you look back at the photos and you can just tell some of the guys' body language, they just didn't want to be on the stage, because there was that comparison, say, between the guy who was first and them, or me and them, and they just kind of stood there. Whereas the idea of them shows is to really project confidence even when you're not confident.
Comparing to each other constantly comparing, constantly full of body shame, even at the pinnacle of health. And now, of course, that's not to say that that's true for everybody, because we know no one story for one person is true for everyone. But it's a theme I've heard over and over again, even with folks who are at the pinnacle of health or who are group fitness instructors. I've heard so many stories of women group fitness instructors, no joke, wearing Spanx underneath their Lycra so they can look and fit the part. Nutritionists who struggle with eating disorders in order to look the part of fit and thin. Perfectly toned fitness influencers who are petrified of the thought of ever gaining 5 pounds. And all for what? Why is there so much power behind it? What do we do with all of this? Do we go on a crusade and try to change everybody overnight? Do we launch our own massive ad campaign? Is that even our responsibility?
And, changing people's mindset about that, I think it's hard. And a lot of people will never change their mindset. And I've come to realize it's not my job to change their mindset. I can present them with information about it. Here are the studies that have shown that this doesn't help. The Health on Every Size book is fantastic information.
Yeah.
But if they don't want to see that there could be something that they're doing wrong, like, it's not my responsibility. And so letting go of that has been really freeing, because I'm like, I don't have to make sure that they're okay. I have to make sure that I'm okay, and encourage those in my circle who may be having this struggle, or people that want to talk to me about it. I'll talk all day about it. So it's like letting go of the pressure of like, I have to make sure everyone realizes this is the real reality.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to solve the world's problems right now in one podcast.
I feel like, I'm going to keep sharing it and hopefully, it'll help some people or plant some seeds and they can think about it. But, I can't physically change their mindset.
So I asked everyone if there was one or two thoughts that they would want you to hear very loud and very clearly, what would those thoughts be? And so here we have a compilation of everyone's thoughts around this incredibly complex and nuanced topic.
My journey to love myself has taken me over 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the greatest investment I've ever made. And I think everyone has the power to love themselves and love their body right where they are, not where it was 10 years ago, not where they think it should be, but just being right in that body that they have today.
Well, I just say, if you're feeling that fight, find people who are fighting it with you. You're not alone. You're not, whether you're trying to learn more about it or you're in the fight against it, you're not alone in fighting the fat stigma, fighting the fat phobias. It's a huge problem. And so don't sit in the shadows, come out and join us in the fight, because we need everyone fighting together. That's the only way we're going to, make progress.
When you're obsessing about your diet, when you're obsessing about the size of your butt, when you're obsessing about changes in your body, you are taking yourself out of what you're meant to be doing in this world, which is chasing your dreams, chasing your passions. Imagine how much time you would have if you stopped worrying about how big your butt was.
Things that trigger you, it's a mirror image. There's some element of you or your soul that is triggered by that particular person, what they said.
I like that.
And it's that mirror image that's triggering something within you, probably is a side of your soul that needs healing, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't have bothered you. Otherwise it would just be like, right, water off a duck's back if that particular person, image, comment, etc. didn't affect you.
I'm in a really good Facebook group. It's called Fit Fatties. It's so encouraging and so empowering. I found that through the Body Kindness podcast as well. That book alone has been like a huge eye opener. Health at Every Size. Finding people who are in your corner with you. We're in this together.
The more we can empower people to get out of the shame and just get into the love for their bodies that they deserve and care for themselves, because you don't owe your self-care to anyone except you, and you deserve it.
I think it would be to just act, take action, but also to know that it's going to be all right, to work through it, to know that true perseverance builds strength. Doing this, you're going to learn from this. And from that, the strength I've built to go on and to grow a business, to travel the world, to step out of a situation where I was more in that time losing my identity myself by trying to be someone for everyone else. I was trying to fit in of being, the guy who did this, the guy who went to parties and did that, and, who said these things, who was into this music, who wore this clothes, just to fit into a cultural norm. And I didn't have any clue who I was exactly. So I had to go through that pain, as I spoke about earlier. That was my pain. And that was my emotional pain to then transform and change my entire personality nearly to who I was. I was often quite closed off and couldn't talk to people and just I lacked all confidence altogether talking to women and just talking to people in general. I just couldn't maintain eye contact with anyone. And then from there, I just came out and just started to actually really push what I was capable of, more so emotionally, but also that played hand in hand with work side by side coming up, was emotionally, physically, mentally, all these barriers started to build and build and build. And once you hit one kind of stepping height, it's great to say kind of pat on the back, well done, but you always kind of want to push and grow from there. But I think as well, it's saying says a little by little, a little becomes a lot. And sometimes it's, as you say, getting from the couch and just getting active, because that's where you're at. Great, awesome. Take that first steps of just going for 1 mile walk today. Fuck, even 10 minutes of a walk, just something, just get a little bit active, build, little small steps.
Body image. And
If only I could go back and tell myself to just love myself a little more, be more appreciative of my body, be more appreciative of where I was, kind of change my mindset to spending more time on what I loved about myself than on what I hated, right? Or loathed, or that inner critic.
Yeah.
I wish I knew what I knew now, and especially because there's so much good research around it that proves you can re-etch those neural pathways, right? And work on that stuff. Words can change your brain.
Oh, that's a good question. Listen to yourself. Listen to that conversation. Listen to what you're saying to yourself, right? They always say that, would you say that to a friend, right? If you were to replay that tape or just record yourself and play it back. I mean, that's really intimate. Sometimes I'll re-listen to myself and it really hits home. I get emotional and I start bawling, but that can work on the opposite end too. If you're saying something that is constantly negative to yourself, record that. And sometimes hearing that would stop yourself right then and there, because you realize the pain and the trauma, right? That's an immediate reaction to what you've said that you may not have been aware of. But once you put that awareness piece on that human element and actually play it physically, right? That's a trigger. And that's what I would say to myself, is just listen to that conversation that is going on in your mind. And if you're not aware of it, then start being aware of it.
But it's that shift. Like you have to just be like accepting yourself and not just being like, woohoo, I'm body positive, because there's a part of that that's very, empowering. Love your body, love yourself, take care, but it's like you have to love your soul too and take care of that part of your body. If that's not being taken care of, you could be in the gym 6 days a week eating spinach and kale and salmon and look a certain way, but if you hate yourself, then you've done no good.
Or like you said before, is it you yourself that's afraid of ever being fat, and that's why you judge others? Because really deep down, you're afraid that might become an issue in your life at some point in time.
I've gone beyond the point where I want to fit into a certain size. It's been a long, hard fought battle. But I've gotten to a point where, you know what, as long as I am trying every day to be fit and to be healthier than I am, I'm good.
That's the success criteria. You just do what you can do every day. Yeah. Yeah. And that whole nother, we don't even have to get into it, but man, you've had a hell of a few years too. Like,
yes. Yeah.
I think if anybody knows what you've been through the last few years, they would bow down and say, wow, you are amazing, woman.
I mean, I didn't realize what I was going through, when I was going through it. It was one day at a time, right? And now I look back and we're like, holy, and we made it through. So yay. Whew. Okay, that is. Now let's move on.
Check on to the next adventure.
Yep.
We can't just make one choice that changes the culture and fixes it. But what we can do, right, is acknowledge that I am not the problem. The culture is, and there are things that make it hard for me to be good to myself. So I've got to do this work to think about my preferences, what I like and don't like, and knowing that I need a plan for how am I going to keep this stuff going and learn how to practice that acceptance of myself no matter what. And I'd even love to move past acceptance, some sort of like radical empowerment, like, hey, don't try to tell me what to do. And, just take it as far as you can, right? But acceptance is usually on the way, and know that your health and well-being is going to be better and your life is going to be better. And that's what matters. But the fact that you have to do more work to convince your doctors or people you really care about, like your best friend, it sucks that you have to do that work. It's emotional labor, but that's just because our culture sucks so bad. Unless you're going to cut off your best friend, and never talk to them again, you're going to have to find a way to set boundaries around how you guys are going to talk about health and wellness and fitness and certain things that's unhelpful for you. It's not just about shutting up and taking it. It's about doing your own work. You're like, this is what works for me. Now I need to let people know these are my values and this is what is and is not okay for our relationship. And then it gets better.
basically not just focus on my physical appearance, because I'm more than what I look, right?
Yeah.
What I look like. Talk to me as a person who's done something more than just exist.
Sincerely thank you to everyone who shared their hearts and helped make this episode possible. If I could take this entire episode and sum it up into just one thing for you to remember, it would be this. As you encounter each and every human being in your life, look them in the eyes with compassion and see their spirit, see their soul, see who they are on the inside. Don't judge a book by its cover. Sincerely, your Bad Couch Guru. If this episode has inspired you to look at people differently in your life or to make some changes in the way that you approach others around you, please send a message to Couch to Active at Be Awesome. That's one word, BEAWESOME at couch2active.com. Please help me out. Head over to Apple Podcasts, put in your 5-star rating, and please take a moment to write a sentence or two review. This is the one thing I have no control over, but it is how this podcast will spread. That's the metrics. You get it. That's the metrics that Apple Podcasts use to decide if they want to share this podcast to more and more people or not. And so I need your help today, right now. Just go to your device you're listening to, scroll all the way down, and you'll see the 5 stars there. Click a 5-star, click write a review. It can be completely anonymous, and do add that in to Apple Podcasts for me. Thank you very much. This is Lynn Lindberg with the Couch to Active podcast, and I believe that exercise should not be dreadful, but getting off the couch is the hardest thing we do. Visit us at couch2active.com. Bye-bye now.